everyone, and welcome back. So today we're doing something a little bit different. Normally I'm doing just talking videos, just coming at you, sharing some insights. But recently I saw another astrologer here on YouTube do a reading on Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther, the Black Panther movies, of Fruitvale Station, and recently the most amazing movie that we've had in a long time, aka Sinners, which was recently nominated for 16 nominations at the Oscars. That's the most movie. This is the movie. Well, okay, can I speak? The most Oscar nominations for any one movie, beating out La La Land and my personal number one favorite, Titanic. So, okay, Ryan Coogler is amazing. So I thought, okay, I loved hearing her take, but I want to add my take to it too. And then as I was studying Ryan's chart, of course, I found myself thinking, I want to study Michael's chart, see what's going on with him. And then I thought, you know what? I want to do a composite reading and I want to do a reading of Ryan and Michael together and what's their relationship, what's the energy that they create, and why they are so good at working together. So that's when I decided I'm going to create three separate videos so that way I don't have one long hour-long video here on one. We're doing Michael B. Jordan today. Then the next video is going to be Ryan Coogler. And then the next video is going to be followed by the not synergy, the composite chart of Ryan and Michael and the energy that they create together. So let's just hop right on into Michael's chart because there is so much juicy goodness in this, and I'm really excited about it. Michael Bakari Jordan. This is his whole signs chart. And as we can see, based off of what I found on the internet, he was born February 9th, 1987 at 8:14 p.m. Pacific Standard Time in Orange, California. So, if you're not familiar with a birth chart reading, essentially what they are is it is a snapshot of what the sky looked like at the time of someone's birth. It's looking at where the stars were, where the luminaries were, what sign they were in, what house they were in, and then getting a window into what is the energy that this person was born into. And when we look at that and we read the skies, the belief is that we're able to see their life lessons, we're able to see their patterns, their love life, and all of that. When we look at our chart, the first things that we see is we have this outer ring here, which has all these little symbols, these glyphs are what we call them. These are what tells us what the zodiac sign is for each of the signs. So, for example, most people know where the sun was when they were born. They know if they were an Aquarius or a Gemini or a Cancer because they know where the sun was. But the truth is that there's more than just the sun. There's the moon, there's the ascendant, there's Mars, there's Venus, and all of them are all in different parts of the sky. And that means different zodiac signs. So these are all the zodiac signs. Then we have these glyphs right here, which these are all of the planets. This is the sun, this is Mercury, this is Jupiter, this is the North Node, Mars, and so forth and so forth. And then we go even deeper, and inside of this circle, you see this wonderful maze of colors. These are what we call aspects. These are the conversations that each of the planets are having with each other based off of the degree or the angle at where they're located in the sky. So this kind of requires a little bit of geometry, but we're not going to dive too deep into that. We're going to keep it pretty simple for today's reading. So this is what the sky looked like the day that Michael B. Jordan, or the night rather, that Michael B. Jordan was born. So now we're going to look at some of his big three. The big three are essentially your sun, moon, and the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon when you were born. That's the next sign that was coming up. For him, his sun, which I'm so glad that we have the time here because the time tells us everything. The time, you can tell a lot by someone's reading without having to look at the birth time. However, birth time is very helpful because it tells us the houses. It tells us where everything is located. Oh, I forgot to tell you that. So the houses are these little numbers right here. You see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Each of these houses represent different themes in someone's lives, not lives, but life. And with that being said, when we are, the time is what tells us. Sorry, I'm just tripping over my words here, but this is because it's my first time doing this kind of reading on a video. But This tells us what area of their life is highlighted, and the timing that someone is born sets the stage for all of these placements. So that's why it's so important. However, if you don't have your birth time when you're looking at a birth chart, you might not be able to tell the houses, i.e., like where things are at certain times. But for the most part, you can still tell a lot about a person's personality, about a person's strengths and their weaknesses, their love life, their career, how they manifest, all without knowing the birth time. But the birth time gives us timing so that we can be intentional to say, like, oh, well, when Jupiter is in your house of career, then you're going to want to really focus on money and going for your dreams and starting your legacy and things like that. Versus when Saturn is in your house of family, there might be some things kind of coming up in that time or whatever. So, timing, the time that you're born matters and is significant for that purpose, but you can tell a lot without it. So now let's talk about his big three. His big three is where the sun was, the moon was, and what was the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon when he was born. As we can see here, he's an Aquarius sun, born February 9th. So that kind of makes sense. His birthday is coming up. Woot woot. And he's a Cancer moon and a Virgo rising, which that Virgo rising makes a lot of sense as to why he tends to be super put together when we do see him. You know, he is not known for like being a hot mess. That's not his vibe. And that really makes sense too. When you look at Aquarius energy, usually gives me very eclectic, very different, very unique because that's something that they rule over. But I think because he's a Virgo rising, that Virgo energy really pulls in all his like eclecticness and makes him look like he's put together. But then when you get to know him, he might be a little bit more odd than you expect, which I think we can see that in um his love of anime and comics. Like he has this kind of like dorky different side to him, which I think is just adorable because I have that too. But I definitely think it's because he has that Aquarius, but that Virgo rising really makes him look super put together. So the Virgo rising, we can see that here. This is the Virgo energy. That's what was rising at the time of his birth. His Cancer moon, let's look at that because the moon represents our emotions. It represents how we feel, how we respond to things, what we need in terms of love and self care or self love. What I find interesting is his moon in Cancer is in the 11th house and it's right next to his Lilith, which his Lilith is also in Cancer. So Lilith is an asteroid and her story is kind of like a connection to what makes us more rebellious, how we respond when it comes to rebellion, when it comes to standing in our power. For him, when he fights against the like what is expected of him emotionally, when he does the odd thing and leans into the feminine, leans into family and nurturing and the energy of receiving, when he leans into that and rebels against what people want him to do, he's actually more abundant and feels safer. Well, maybe not safer. He might feel a little uncomfortable, but it is something that deep down he finds safety in. So he's not one that's going to like, if someone tells him, this is what I need you to do in order to be successful, for him, if it doesn't align with what he feels is the right thing to do, then he's not going to find success because he's not going to find joy in it. He has to he has to listen to his heart and be willing to kind of go against what people's expectations are of him. And the more he does that, the more abundant that he actually is. What I also find interesting is that his moon is in the 11th house. The 11th house rules over friendships, connections, community, networking. And so one thing that I think that is really interesting, actually, and another thing that I'm seeing here is his Jupiter in Pisces, which is in the seventh house, the other house of connection, of relationships and partnerships. So the seventh house rules over marriage, collaboration, partnerships, friendships, whereas the 11th house rules over the friendships that you get or gain through like colleagues, through networking and the communities that you're part of and things like that. Both of those houses, as we can see here, are activated by personal planets. Jupiter being activated by the seventh house, and the moon, no, Jupiter being the seventh house being activated by Jupiter and by Mercury, as well as the 11th house, another social house, being activated by the moon and Lilith. So for him, a lot of his success is going to come from, or was going to come from, his friends and the connections that he's made, which we can see that through the connections that he's made with Chadwick, rest in peace, the connection he obviously made with Ryan Coogler that he's continuing to make, the connection that he's made with Tessa Thompson as well. When he partners with people, it actually helps to elevate his profile. He becomes more seen through the eyes of working in partnership. So going solo doesn't mean that he won't be successful, but he does better when he works with others, when he decides to kind of be in partnership with, like, it's me and Ryan, me and Tessa, me and Chadwick, kind of like that, which I think that that's why it's like that formula is working for him right now. So that's the first thing that I see there too, is that moon in Cancer. I also love a moon in Cancer, man, because the moon in Cancer is happy in that place. The moon rules over, does the moon rule over Cancer? Cancer rules over the moon, or moon, whatever. The point is that Cancer and moon go together. Each of the planets are attached to a zodiac sign. And so, for example, Saturn is attached to Capricorn, Jupiter is attached to Sagittarius, and the moon is attached to Cancer. So the fact that his moon is in Cancer creates a really nice flow for him. It just makes it so much easier for him to just feel his emotions, which is also why I think we really enjoy watching him, because he tends to pick roles where we get to see the fullest expression of his sensitivities, of his connection, all of that. So I think that that's because of that moon in Cancer. Now let's move over to, before I move over here to this Jupiter in the seventh house, because I definitely want to talk about that. Let's talk about his Aquarius Sun in the sixth house. So the sixth house rules over the daily things that we do, our daily work ethic, the employers that we work for or employees that we work with, our coworkers. It rules over habits that we form as well. I think one of the reasons why he is so successful when it comes to taking care of his body and taking care of his health, because this is also the house of health, is because his sun is at 20 degrees Aquarius in the house of health, of daily habits, of routines, of working with others. So as we can see in his chart, he has a lot of energy that's devoted towards connecting with other people. This is not a solo type of chart. This is someone who easily thrives when he's in relationship with other people. And also with him being an Aquarius sun, Aquarius rules over friendships, connections, the networks we are part of, the communities that we belong to. And so he really thrives in those spaces, is being like, if he came to me in a reading and was like, you know what? I'm not really feeling really lucky right now. I would ask him, when's the last time that you've connected with your friends? When's the last time you collaborated and partnered with someone else? That's going to help you to be seen, because so much of his chart is about him connecting with other people. Now, something that I find interesting is that even though he is the Aquarius, he actually has a stellium in Capricorn. And let's see. Yeah, that's all I see is a stellium in Capricorn. But he has a fairly balanced chart, because he has 3 placements in Capricorn, 2 placements in Sagittarius, 2 placements in Cancer, 2 placements in Gemini, 2 placements in Aries, 2 placements in Pisces. So he has a pretty balanced chart here. But this is why your chart is so much more important than just knowing your sun sign, because even though he is the Aquarius sun, he doesn't actually have a lot of Aquarius energy within him. So he doesn't show up as this incredibly eclectic, quote unquote, oddball type of person. It's in him and it's at the forefront because it's his sun sign, but it's not something that, like, when you really get to know him on a deeper level, which I like to look at the planets as like the rising sign is your It's your ascendant. That's the perspective that you have on the world. It's how you kind of shape everything. And then the sun sign is who you are when you feel a little comfortable. The moon sign is who you are when you feel really emotionally safe with someone. And then you can kind of really let them in, let someone in. And then the deeper you dive into each of the planets, the deeper you explore who you are with the expression. So the fact is that with an Aquarius sun, but not a lot of Aquarius energy in him. I mean, again, there's nothing else in Aquarius here. He doesn't have a lot of Aquarian tendencies, but it is something that's in him. And I think this is also why when it comes to giving back to people and to the community, specifically his community, the Black community, I feel, which I don't know why I said it like that, like I ain't Black. Y'all feel me? Y'all know what I'm saying. I think why he feels this call is because of the fact that he is the Aquarius and he is the Aquarius, and because he has that moon in the 11th house. So he does feel this responsibility to give back, to protect, to look forward for his people, whatever his community is, whether we're talking about being a part of the Black community, whether we're talking about being a part of the arts and really speaking to that. I think that's something that he's always kind of trying to support and trying to encourage people, especially people of color, to kind of give back and be in the arts, be seen for who they are. I think as well, the fact that he's always elevating people from before in his life, whether it be other actors and actresses that he's worked with in the past. I think the reason why he is very much, a ride or die, a person like you're coming with me along for the ride kind of vibe, is because of the fact that he has that Aquarius sun in the sixth house and that Cancer moon in the 11th. So that's something that I see there. So now let's move on to this Jupiter. Now, his Jupiter in Pisces is a really interesting placement because it's in his seventh house along with his Mercury. Okay, Mercury represents how we think, how we talk, how we share with the communities and the people that we relate to. And Jupiter represents how we attract, how we manifest, how we create opportunities for ourselves in our lives. And if you're struggling with manifestation, if you're struggling to bring things into your life, look towards your Jupiter. What sign is it in? So for him, with a Jupiter in Pisces, I think this also speaks to his love of like fantasy, of comic books, of anime and comic stories. If you know anything about Michael, he talks a lot about anime and just growing up watching this stuff and knowing the lore behind the art. He can go in depth about the stories. Him and his fellow Aquarius sister, Megan the Stallion, they love them some anime. And I really think it has to do with that Aquarius energy. And maybe we should do a reading on Megan the Stallion because I wonder as well if she has a lot of Pisces in her chart too. But the reason I say this is because Pisces rules over fantasy and imagination and thinking otherworldly thoughts, not being so tied to like the facts, but really diving into the magic behind things. With him having a Jupiter in Pisces, that means that for him, when he leans into fantasy, when he leans into imagination and just kind of thinking bigger than what's in front of him, it allows him to manifest with ease. So this makes a lot of sense why he would be very successful at the arts and very successful at storytelling because Pisces, it doesn't rule over storytelling, but it rules over the stories that we know. It rules over like again, the fantasy, the pretend of it all. And then with him having a Mars in Aries, which that is a very interesting placement. When he gets angry, honey, because Mars represents how we act when we are activated, when we feel motivated, when we feel clear on like what we want to do with a Mars in Aries, ooh, he probably has quite the temper when he when he is angry. But it also means that he is intense when it comes to focus and intentionality. That combined with a Sun in Aquarius in the sixth house and a Jupiter in the seventh house, to me that makes so much sense as to why he cares so much about his health, why he values discipline and working hard. He would be, called to movies like Creed, called to movies like Killmonger, or not Killmonger, Black Panther, where he shows up as Killmonger. He would be called to those type of roles because it allows him to channel some of that anger that he might feel into something of purpose, which is a very Mars and Aries type of energy. In addition to the fact that that placement also suggests that when it comes to the discipline necessary to get his body to a certain place or to get his mind to a certain place, he would find it not easy, but he would enjoy the challenge of it, of trying to get to some sort of goal, whether it's having your body look a certain way, your mind be a certain way. One of the things that he talked about when he did his role of Killmonger in Black Panther is how he had to actually go to therapy after that role because he got so lost in the character that it was really hard for him to kind of come back out. And that speaks to his level of commitment to the roles that he plays. But I can see that as a Mars and Aries, Killmonger, and if you know Killmonger's story, which I'm not going to dive into, but if you know his story inside of the movie, a lot of African Americans in particular, I feel like we really connect to that story. We really connect to his anger. We understand it. He might not have gone about things the right way, but we understand it. You know, he wasn't 100%, villainous because some of his understanding was correct. It was just the way in which he wanted to get justice was not probably not the best. But it makes sense that for Michael B. Jordan, he would really overly connect to this character because of that Mars in Aries. There's a part of him that really wants to express his anger, wants to get out where he feels there has been an injustice, and wants people to know that message and then do the right thing. It really bothers him. Ooh, it activates him deeply when he sees injustice. That is something that really gets to him. So I think part of why he felt called to that role is because it would give him an opportunity to express his own anger, which is why it became so hard for him to disentangle himself. Okay, but then moving on from the Mars in Aries, I know I just jumped from Jupiter to Mars when I meant to just talk about Jupiter here. With that Jupiter in Pisces, part of his success comes from leaning into his imagination, leaning into the arts, and leaning into what isn't there, but bringing it to life and making it become the real thing. And so I think that kind of speaks to why he would be so successful at the arts. The other thing that I find interesting is with a Jupiter here in the seventh house. This is the house of marriage, of partnership, of collaborations. So there's a couple of ways that I see this playing out in his life. On one hand, as a Jupiter in the seventh house, this is why him and Ryan do so well together. Because when he partners with people that he's worked with before or that he has a relationship with, he's more likely to see success because his Jupiter is in the seventh house. So partnerships and collaborations are helpful. Doesn't mean that he's not going to be as successful. It's just, it really kind of amps things up a lot easier. The other thing that I notice here is that because his Jupiter is in the seventh house, sometimes when you see that placement, that could mean that they marry wealthy or that when they work with other people or partner with other people or fall in love with someone, they might fall in love with someone who has a lot of abundance or a lot of resources. So that's going to be very interesting to see, as well as he might feel like he's even luckier when he's in a relationship with someone. Now, his love life is kind of, we don't know all the ins and outs. I only know about Lori Harvey. With everyone else, it's been a up and down kind of thing. So it'll be very interesting to see what he decides when it comes to partnership. Is he going to be a bachelor for the rest of his life? Are we looking at a George Clooney situation here where he eventually marries when he's older? I don't know, but that'll be interesting to kind of watch his love life. And actually, let me see what oh, hold on. I'm seeing something good here. Okay. So his Venus is in Capricorn. And you know what? Your girl's Venus is also in Capricorn. Hey. So I love that for us, even though I'm married, but that's all right. Because that's the only reason that we can't be together, right? Okay. Anyway, so with his Venus in Capricorn, he is very much someone who likes to take care and be taken care of by his partner. This also is kind of a signal for like a wealthier, he might fall in love with someone who makes a lot of money or who makes as much money or more than he does. Venus in Capricorn doesn't always mean that, but because of that placement, it can mean that he looks for someone who kind of has their own and can take care of themselves and definitely is not trying to lean onto his resources in order to survive. He wants someone that can match his level of resourcefulness and then figure out how to make that happen. That could be financially, that could be mentally, that could be resources in terms of connections like friends, family, things like that. Like the connection is going to be really who they're connected to and what they bring to the table is just as important to the relationship to him as like any other part of the relationship. So that's something to kind of note with the Venus in Capricorn and with a Jupiter in the seventh house. The last thing that I want to note here is that his Jupiter is opposing his ascendant, which I find that to be very interesting. So when we're looking, I'm not going to dive too deep into aspects because we can go on for days on that, and maybe if depending on how many people want this, I may do more into his chart. But one thing I see about that is with his ascendant being at 26 degrees Virgo and his Jupiter being at 25 degrees Pisces. So it's off by 1 point, but again, it's pretty much that's pretty much an opposition. That means that they're both in opposite signs. Virgo and Pisces have different, they have the same motivation, but they have different ways of going about it. That's how I look at oppositions. So sometimes when he shows up as him, as hit like when he shares his perspective, he may sometimes feel like it prevents him from getting the things that he wants. And it's because of the fact that his Jupiter opposes his perspective. His luck opposes his perspective. So what he has to learn, part of his purpose here on in this lifetime, is to learn how to not be so attached to his way of thinking. That he has to learn to say, you know what? Let me think about that. Let me be open to what you have to say. Because on one hand, he might feel like, listen, when I listen to just my own perspective and my own experiences, that allows me to create what I want, manifest how I want, blah, blah, blah. He may feel like that, but the truth of the matter is that when his luck lies not just in listening to his own experience but also listening to the experiences of others. So that doesn't mean he doesn't trust himself. Now he should definitely always trust his, you always should trust your own intuition, but just when you have that Jupiter and you have a lot of activation in these houses like the seventh house, like the 11th house, these social houses, then it's an invitation to learn how to listen to other people and listen to their experiences and learn from them. So that's something that I kind of notice here. So now let's move on to his Oscars night. Okay. So now we're moving on to Oscars night, which is going to be March 15th, 2026 in LA. And I wanted to do this real quick because I just wanted to double check to see if I could see any signals that maybe he might win for best actor. And first thing that I notice here is when I'm looking for like success in career or elevation in career, I'm looking at that 10th house. The first thing I notice is that it's empty. There's nothing there. And he does have Chiron in Gemini, which I do too, but his Chiron is in the 10th house. So something that he really is very sensitive about, it's both where he finds a lot of healing, where he finds a lot of clarity, but it's also a place where he can find a lot of challenges, is his career, his purpose, his legacy. He might feel this conflict sometimes where he's like trying to um elevate his legacy, but there's like resistance to it all the time. So again, that kind of speaks to his level of discipline, where he's constantly pushing himself in these roles that he chooses. And the roles that he tends to be the most successful at are the ones where he's really pushing the boundaries of his character, of his body, of his mind, and all of that. But what I do see is that on the night of the Oscars, there's nothing happening. There's nothing preventing, but there's nothing moving forward in his house of legacy. So that could mean that he wins the Oscar because nothing's preventing it, but it could also mean that there's nothing actually triggering that to actually happen. However, something that I do see is not his, but Jupiter in Cancer is activating both his moon, his Lilith, and his 11th house of community. That could be an indicator that he could win the Oscar, because what that means is that he might have this energy of like being elevated and seen within the community, being honored within the community. Another placement that I think kind of speaks to this is that the moon that night is going to be in Aquarius, and that's going to be close to his sun, within a couple of degrees of his sun. It's also in his sixth house of coworkers, of work and daily work that we do. So with that being in that placement, to me, that also could be an indicator that he wins the Oscar, because he's being seen as like as he's being seen and appreciated for the work that he's contributed towards the community. That's a possibility. However, I could also see that it be that just being nominated is what is allowing him to be seen in a new light, in a way that he's never been seen before. Because, hey, at the end of the day, even if he doesn't win, he'll always be known as Oscar nominated until he does win an Oscar, which he totally deserves for so many reasons. But at the end of the day, he'll always be, even when they introduce him in new movies, they'll say Oscar nominated actor Michael B. Jordan. Hopefully they will be saying Oscar winner Michael B. Jordan, but we're just saying he definitely deserves it. I mean, he played two different people. He should get Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor, but that's just my thing. Anyways, point is that I can see with these placements, I can see how they could lean towards him being elevated within his community, him being seen and appreciated by his coworkers. I could see that being a win, but I could also see that that could just be him being elevated and honored that night. I could see a situation too where if he were to lose, that someone on the stage acknowledges him and speaks to his work, speaks to the fact that he did two roles and says that he did such a great job. So I could see that happening too. Basically, the point is that that night he's going to be honored in some capacity because of how much his houses of community. Look at this house as well, his social house, right? Pisces is lit up. We have Sun, Mars, Mercury, and the North Node all in his house of the seventh house of partnerships. And this is a conjunction here. We have Mars at 10 degrees, we have Mercury at 9 degrees, and the North Node at 8-degree Pisces in that seventh house. That's a lot of attention being shown his way, being thrown his way. So I definitely could see him still getting a lot of attention regardless. The other thing that I see here is that with the South Node in Virgo, and in his house of identity, there's definitely a shedding. Like he has moved on from who there's a definite before and after. There's that moment where he was, one thing, and now he's moving on to the next thing. And I can definitely see that here with this North Node in the South Node rather in the first house. So that's all that I have for you guys. I would love to hear from you. Do you have any questions about your own birth chart or the birth chart reading that you saw today? I would also love to hear from my fellow astrologers. What are some of the insights that you have based off of what you saw in his reading? And can you see anything that indicates that he might win the Oscar too? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.